blood-eyed up.
911, what's your emergency?
Scared the Orca has Amelia, and that thing is not letting go of it. It has been minutes they are underwater, and you must send someone here fast.
The security footage from August 22nd, 2024, shows exactly what happened when Amelia Brooks, 27 years old, entered the water with Kona, a 4,000-pound false killer whale at CoralWorld Miami. What started as the park's signature sunset show would become 43 seconds of pure terror that nearly ended in tragedy. But this isn't just another marine park incident. What really happened that day has been systematically covered up for months, and the internal documents I'm about to reveal show how a maintenance worker named Carlos Vega made a split-second decision that would destroy his career but save Amelia's life. We've compiled exclusive evidence, witness testimonies, internal CoralWorld documents, and expert analysis that has never been shared publicly until now. Every detail of this investigation, from Amelia's terrifying ordeal to the corporate cover-up that followed, is documented in this video. If you want to stay informed about stories like this that expose the truth behind industries that put profits over human lives, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for notifications. We're one of the few channels willing to investigate these dangerous cover-ups, and your support helps us continue bringing you these critical stories that mainstream media won't touch. False killer whales aren't actually killer whales. They're smaller, faster, more unpredictable. They're also significantly more aggressive toward humans in captivity. This fact was carefully omitted from CoralWorld's marketing materials, which called them the playful cousins of orcas. But internal documents reveal that Kona had attacked trainers 6 times in 3 years. Each incident was buried, reclassified, sanitized. The last report, filed just 4 days before Amelia's murder show, described Kona exactly what veterinarians call escalating predatory fixation. Amelia Brooks had worked at CoralWorld for 5 years, starting as a dolphin trainer before moving to the false killer whale program. She was young, ambitious, and completely unaware that Kona had nearly killed a trainer in fraction of his money. The Japanese facility was CoralWorld $200,000 just to get all their evidence. Her colleagues described her as careful. Amelia always double-checked everything. Former trainer Michelle she memorized every safety protocol, but she trusted the company when they said Kona was safe. What Amelia didn't know was that Kona's history was far darker than anyone told her. Captured off the coast of Hawaii in 2008, Kona had spent 16 years in various facilities, each one documenting increasingly violent behavior. At his first facility in Taiwan, he'd bitten through a trainer's wetsuit, leaving permanent scars. In Japan, he'd held trainer Yuki Nakamura underwater for over a minute, breaking 3 of her ribs. The incident report from that attack, which CoralWorld had in their files, stated clearly, "This animal poses an extreme risk to human safety and should never be used in direct contact programs." Dr. Patricia Wells, CoralWorld's head veterinarian, had been documenting Kona's deterioration for months. Her reports, obtained through a whistleblower, paint a picture of an animal in severe psychological distress. Kona displays all markers of captivity-induced psychosis, she wrote in July 2024. Repetitive swimming patterns, self-mutilation against tank walls, hyperaggression toward trainers. He's not suitable for performance. He's barely suitable for captivity at all. The morning of August 22nd began with multiple warning signs that should have canceled the show. Kona had been ramming the gates between pools since 4 a.m., hard enough to bend the steel bars. The overnight security guard, Marcus Thompson, had logged Kona extremely agitated, ramming gates repeatedly. Never seen him like this. He'd refused his morning feed, instead circling his tank in tight patterns that marine biologists recognize as pre-attack behavior. When trainer Jennifer Cox tried to run through morning behaviors from the platform, Kona had lunged at her, his jaws snapping shut inches from her hands. At 6:47 a.m., Dr. Patricia Wells had sent an emergency email to the entire management team, Kona displaying acute aggression indicators identical to his previous attacks. All water work must be canceled immediately. This is a medical directive, not a suggestion. That email was forwarded to CEO James Morrison with a note from Operations Manager Richard Hayes, Sunset show is sold out. 3,000 tickets at $95 each. $285,000 in revenue. Recommend proceeding with caution, but maintaining schedule. Morrison's response, sent at 7:15 a.m., would later become key evidence in the criminal investigation. Proceed with show. Have emergency team on standby. We can't afford another cancellation this quarter. Carlos Vega wasn't supposed to be there that night. The 41-year-old maintenance supervisor had officially clocked out at 3 p.m. after a 9-hour shift. But the main filtration pump for the false killer whale habitat had been making concerning noises all week, and Carlos knew if it failed during the show, thousands of gallons of water would flood the guest areas. He'd stayed late, unpaid, and prepared himself rather than wait for the contractor who wouldn't arrive until Monday. Carlos had worked at CoralWorld for 18 years. He'd started as a janitor, worked his way up to maintenance supervisor, and had seen everything the park tried to hide. He'd mopped blood from platforms after attacks. He repaired tanks damaged by distressed animals. He watched trainers leave in ambulances while management crafted press releases about minor incidents. He knew which animals were dangerous. He knew Kona was the worst. At 6:45 p.m., Carlos was in the pump room beneath the main tank, lying on his back under the massive filtration system, when he heard the show beginning above him. Through the grated ceiling, he could hear Amelia's amplified voice explaining false killer whale intelligence to 3,000 guests. He could hear the crowd's excitement, children laughing, cameras clicking. He tightened another bolt and tried to work faster. Something felt wrong about tonight. The Sunset Show was CoralWorld's premium event. Tickets cost 3 times the regular price. Guests were promised an intimate demonstration of the bond between human and marine mammal. The stadium was designed like an amphitheater, with the tank at the center and seats rising steeply on all sides. Every seat was filled. Children pressed against the glass walls. Professional photographers had paid extra for premium positions to capture the perfect shot of trainer and whale silhouetted against the Miami sunset. At 6:52 p.m., Amelia entered the water wearing her signature blue wetsuit, the one she'd worn in all the promotional materials. The crowd applauded. Kona surfaced 20 feet away, his black skin gleaming in the golden light. For 3 minutes, they performed the routine perfectly. Kona responded to signals, performed his behaviors, seemed engaged and cooperative. Amelia's confidence grew with each successful behavior. The crowd was mesmerized. But Carlos Vega, working in the pump room below, noticed something through the grates that made him stop mid-turn of his wrench. Kona kept positioning himself between Amelia and the exit platforms. It was subtle, but deliberate. Every time Amelia moved toward a ladder, Kona would drift that direction, cutting off her path. Carlos had seen this before, 15 years ago, with a dolphin that later attacked his trainer. He stood up, watching through the grates, his tools forgotten. At 6:55 p.m., Amelia gave the signal for the finale, a high-speed push where Kona would propel her across the pool using his rostrum. It was the crowd favorite, the money shot that appeared on every brochure. Kona disappeared beneath the surface, accelerating from the deep end. But something was wrong. He was coming too fast from the wrong angle. Amelia tried to adjust her position, raising her hand in a stop signal, but Kona wasn't watching her hands anymore. He struck her midsection with the force of a car crash. The impact was audible even over the crowd noise, a wet, crushing sound that multiple witnesses said they'd never forget. Amelia's body folded in half, her ribs breaking instantly, her spleen rupturing from the force. She was launched completely out of the water, looking backward, arms flaming, before crashing down hard. The crowd gasped, then applauded, thinking it was part of the show. But Kona was already on her. He grabbed her left leg in his jaws, teeth designed for gripping large prey penetrating through her wetsuit and flesh. He pulled her under with savage efficiency. The clear water turned dark red. Parents began grabbing children, rushing for exits. Screams echoed through the stadium. In the pump room below, Carlos Vega heard the change in crowd noise, from excitement to terror. Through the grates, he could see the water churning, dark with blood. He could see Amelia's arm break the surface once, twice, then disappear. He stood frozen for exactly 2 seconds, his mind racing in fragments. Carlos grabbed an emergency hook pole from the wall and ran for the maintenance ladder. The hatch opened directly into the tank, a violation of so many safety protocols that using it during a show was grounds for immediate termination and criminal prosecution. The insurance liability alone could bankrupt him personally. He didn't care anymore. He exploded through the hatch into chaos. 3,000 people screaming. Alarms finally blaring as the emergency team scrambled to respond. Kona 20 feet away, holding Amelia underwater. Carlos could see her struggling, weakening, bubbles streaming from her mouth. Without thinking, he slammed the hook pole against the metal tank wall with all his strength, creating a deafening clang that reverberated through the water. Kona turned toward the sound, momentarily releasing Amelia. She surfaced, gasping, choking on blood and water, her left leg mangled and bleeding profusely. Carlos dropped the pole and dove in, knowing he was probably about to die. The water was warm, thick with blood. He grabbed Amelia under her arms and pulled her toward the platform edge. She was semi-conscious, her body limp, dead weight in the water. Kona had already turned back, accelerating toward them. Carlos could see the whale's eye, black and focused, locked onto him. With strength born of pure adrenaline, Carlos lifted Amelia partially out of the water and pushed her up onto the platform, her injured leg dragging. Hands reached down from above, other trainers finally arriving, pulling her to safety. Carlos tried to follow, but Kona was on him. The false killer whale's jaws closed on Carlos's maintenance boot, crushing it, ripping it off his foot. Carlos felt teeth graze his ankle as he kicked frantically with his other leg, striking Kona's sensitive rostrum. The whale released him for just a second, long enough for Carlos to scramble onto the platform as Kona's head slammed against the edge, gnashing inches from his legs. Paramedics reached them within seconds, working on Amelia while Carlos collapsed beside her, his entire body shaking from adrenaline and shock. She was unconscious, bleeding severely from her mangled leg, but breathing. They applied tourniquets, started IVs, working with practiced efficiency. Carlos watched them load her onto a stretcher and rush her toward the ambulance, leaving him sitting on the platform in socks, 1 foot bleeding, watching Kona circle below. CEO James Morrison arrived at the platform within minutes, his face pale. "What the hell did you do?" "You weren't authorized to be here. You violated every protocol. You're done. Security will escort you out." Carlos looked up at him, still shaking. "I saved her life. You opened us to millions in liability." Morrison snapped. "You're fired. And if you speak to anyone about this, we'll sue you into bankruptcy." If you're someone who believes workers deserve to know the truth about the risks they face at marine entertainment facilities, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. What happened next has been systematically covered up by CoralWorld's legal team, but we've obtained the documents that expose everything. Amelia survived, but barely. The damage to her left leg was catastrophic. 17 surgeries over 8 months to repair shattered bones, torn muscles, severed tendons. The sciatic nerve was partially severed, leaving her with permanent partial paralysis below the knee. She required 47 units of blood during her initial surgery. She died twice on the operating table and was resuscitated. She spent 3 weeks in a medically induced coma while her body fought massive infection from the bacteria in Kona's mouth. When she finally woke, her first words were, "Who pulled me out?" When they told her about Carlos, about how he'd been fired, she began recording videos from her hospital bed, sharing them on social media. Within 72 hours, Carlos Vega became internationally famous as the maintenance worker who chose a stranger's life over his own security. Carlos was fired the next morning via certified letter. CoralWorld cited reckless endangerment, violation of safety protocols, and unauthorized access to restricted areas. They fought his unemployment claim, stating he was terminated for gross misconduct. They threatened criminal charges if he spoke publicly about the incident. They sent cease and desist letters when he gave a single interview to local news. But the footage had already gone viral. Tourists in the stadium had recorded everything on their phones. The sight of a maintenance worker in work clothes diving into bloody water to save a trainer while security guards stood frozen on the platforms became a symbol of individual courage versus corporate cowardice. A GoFundMe for Carlos's legal defense raised $300,000 in a week. When CoralWorld tried to sue him for defamation after he described the cover-ups he witnessed, public backlash was swift and devastating. Dr. Patricia Wells resigned the day after the attack and went public with everyone. 18 years of suppressed incident reports, videos of Kona's previous attacks that had been hidden from trainers, email chains where executives discussed acceptable casualty rates for their shows. Her testimony to federal investigators was damning. They knew someone would die eventually. They calculated the cost. They decided it was worth it. The FBI investigation that followed revealed the depth of CoralWorld's negligence. They've been operating on expired permits. They've falsified safety records. They've bribed inspectors. 3 executives, including Morrison, were charged with reckless endangerment and criminal negligence. Morrison was eventually convicted and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, though he served only 14 months. CoralWorld was fined $1.2 million and permanently banned from keeping false killer whales. The park closed permanently 6 months later, unable to recover from the publicity nightmare and legal costs. Kona was transferred to a sea pen facility in the Caribbean, but the damage from 16 years of captivity was irreversible. He displayed severe psychological symptoms, swimming in endless circles, banging his head against the pen walls. He died 8 months later from a systemic infection. The necropsy revealed brain lesions, worn teeth, multiple organ failures. He'd been slowly dying for years. Carlos Vega never worked in the marine park industry again, but his story spread throughout Miami's construction industry. A company owner named Miguel Delgado, who'd built his business on safety-first principles, hired Carlos as a safety supervisor. Anyone who'd risk everything to save a stranger is exactly who I want protecting my workers, Delgado said. Carlos's salary doubled overnight. His kids kept their college funds. His mortgage was safe, but the trauma remained. Carlos suffered from PTSD, requiring therapy to process what happened. He'd wake up at night feeling Kona's teeth on his ankle, seeing Amelia's blood in the water. His therapist told him this was normal, that heroes carry wounds too. I'm not a hero, Carlos would insist. I just couldn't watch her die. Amelia Brooks survived, but would never fully recover. She walks with a permanent limp and chronic pain. She requires a cane on bad days. She can't swim anymore. The sight of deep water triggers panic attacks. She teaches marine biology at a community college now, using her story to educate students about the reality of marine captivity. She shows them her scars, the deep puncture wounds that run from her hip to her ankle, and explains what happens when we force apex predators to perform for our entertainment. She stays in touch with Carlos, calling him every August 22nd to say thank you. He always responds the same way. I just did what anyone would do. But they both know that's not true. The emergency response team was still suiting up when Carlos went through that hatch. The other employees were following protocol, protecting themselves legally. The security guards who were supposed to protect trainers stood on the platforms, paralyzed by liability concerns. Only Carlos chose differently. During Amelia's testimony at Morrison's trial, she was asked why she thought Carlos saved her when no one else did. Her answer was simple. Because he saw a person drowning, not a liability. He saw a life that mattered more than a child. The truth about marine entertainment is simple and beautiful. These facilities know their animals are dangerous. They calculate the cost of human injury against profit margins. They count on employees following rules, staying silent, protecting the company. Carlos Vega broke every rule. He destroyed his career to save someone who he'd never even spoken to. That's the difference between corporate protocol and human conscience. Amelia now works with several marine conservation organizations, fighting to end cetacean captivity worldwide. She's helped pass legislation in 3 states banning the use of marine mammals in entertainment. When she speaks at conferences, she always mentions Carlos, the maintenance worker who chose her life over his livelihood. He reminds us that heroes don't always wear uniforms or have special training, she says. Sometimes they wear work boots and fix pumps for $18 an hour. Sometimes they're ordinary people who make extraordinary choices when it matters most. Carlos still works for Delgado Construction, where he's known for his uncompromising approach to safety. He's saved 3 workers from potential fatal accidents by stopping work when he spotted dangers others missed. His colleagues joke that he'd shut down a billion-dollar project to save a single life. They're not wrong. The last time Carlos and Amelia met in person was at a marine conservation fundraiser where she was speaking. She was on stage, describing her attack, when she spotted him in the back of the room. She stopped mid-sentence, pointed to him, and said, "That man in the back saved my life. He lost everything to pull me from that tank. He's the reason I'm standing here today." The room gave Carlos a standing ovation. He stood there, uncomfortable with the attention, still wearing his work clothes because he'd come straight from a job site. When the applause finally died down, someone asked him to speak. He walked to the microphone, looked at the crowd of donors and activists, and said simply, 18 years I worked there. 18 years I watched trainers get hurt while executives counted money. That night, I decided someone's daughter was worth more than my job. That's all. Anyone here would have done the same. But the statistics say otherwise. In the history of marine park attacks, bystander intervention is almost non-existent. People follow protocol. They protect themselves. They wait for authorized personnel. Carlos Vega didn't wait. And because he didn't, Amelia Brooks is alive today.